We are live from the Shared Universe Studios here on the Jersey Shore. I'm Rob Acampora. This is the A-Game. They are bringing it when they come here, and sometimes they actually come in the studio, like Mike Farragher has done today. Thank you very much.
Here I am.
Appreciate you coming.
Listeners need to know that there's some heat lamps here, so I kind of feel like I have the complection of baked ham. So
you know what? I'm starting to turn red, too, come to think of it.
Hopefully we can color correct this. Can we fix this in post, CJ?
Yeah.
It looks good. You look good.
Oh, by the way, CJ Cullen will be on the board handling all this. I am dressed appropriately because my man is the king of the Irish, as you will see by one of his books. And matter of fact, give me photo number 2 so we can blow this up a little bit more, CJ.
Boom.
This is your brain on Shamrocks. Mike Farragher has written 6 books. He is what you call the king of Irish guilt, I think is the best way to describe it. Or you know a lot about it. And
once you write a book, you're officially a published authority.
There you go.
I could get a PhD now in this if I needed to.
And you really did write from your own personal experiences when it comes to living in an Irish Catholic family.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, these books kind of started out as a lark. I mean, if you kind of roll the tape back in my journalistic career, I worked for the Irish Voice for a number of years.
As a matter of fact, CJ, if you can put up number 7 just to give them a plug and put the logo up there. And you were doing music back then.
So I was the music critic for the Irish Voice. And of course, you know, March, everybody loves you because it's St. Patrick's Day. But October, not a lot going on in the Irish community. True. So I went to my editor one day and I'm like, I tell these funny stories about growing up Irish and Catholic and guilty in the pub when I go out, and people seem to laugh at it. And maybe I'm going to try to write this.
Right.
So I wrote this, and I was always, every time somebody laughed at something, I would always be mindful of where do they laugh and where do they not. So I almost like road tested them at the bar, wrote them down, and the letters that came in to the editor were like, oh my God, this is my mother. I grew up Irish Catholic and guilty. And this is your brain on Shamrocks is basically when you wake up hungover on a Sunday morning and your mom knocks on the door and says, it's time for Mass. You're like, Mass is not going to happen. My mom in her Irish accent would say, well, I'm sure the Lord Jesus Christ didn't want to get up the day he died for your sins.
Yes.
So it's like that guilt that, I still don't have I'm 56 years old. I still don't have a tattoo because I'm deathly afraid of my mom. She's still alive. She's always like permeating my thoughts. And she's an awesome lady, by the way.
Right, and CJ understands that too, and so do
I. Definitely do, right?
I'm half Irish. I mean, my mother's side is the Lenahans. Oh my God! So it's every one of my mom and her sisters, and they're all pretty much the same way. Masters of the guilt, as I like to say.
Yeah.
They know
for sure. So we were really blown away by the reaction of the column, and then I did a compendium of the columns into the book. So there was This Is Your Brain on Shamrocks, and then the sequel, which is This Is Your Brain on Shamrocks 2, 50 Shades of Green.
Matter of fact, CJ, scroll down a little bit. We do have the photo. I want to put it up there. And by the way, all these books are available. If you go to Amazon or any place that you buy books, you will find these. So worth your investment.
So 50 Shades of Green came out around the time of 50 Shades of Grey, and I thought that was going to be kind of a funny thing because
a little play on words, obviously.
Irish don't really talk about sex. I mean, my Birds and the Bees discussion was one sentence. It was like, you didn't get that thing down there between your legs for stirring tea. And that's like,
oh my God.
And I was like, oh my God, Mom, I don't have anything else.
Gee, thanks, Mom.
But so it was kind of a play on what was going on at the time, which was 50 Shades of Grey.
Right.
I kind of shamelessly rode that.
Why not?
Google search.
Sure. Why not go there? And what's it like to be able to do what you love to do? I mean, obviously doing these books, there's a passion for you to write.
There is, yeah. And there's also a passion to connect with people as well. I mean, one of the things, as I mentioned, the reason why the books got so successful was that, you've got a Lenahan. So you can identify with the Irish Catholic guilt.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And here I was thinking, writing, because, as a writer, you're always thinking, well, is this just me? Am I being self-indulgent? But when you actually release a book like something like this, and then everybody comes to you and like, this is my mother.
Right.
My grandmother did this. And you realize just how connected we all are because we have a shared story, especially if you're an Irish or a Polish Catholic immigrant background. We all have that situation of our parents were working class people. They put everything they had into us.
Very true.
And then all of a sudden, like they keep you on the straight and narrow with guilt and the Catholic Church and all that other fun stuff. So it's very gratifying when your work connects with people. I think one of the greatest sales I ever had in the This Is Your Brain on Shamrocks book is I remember through the website somebody bought 15 copies, and I'm like,
Wow.
are you sure that was only one copy?
Right, maybe typo.
And the woman said, no, I actually bought this because my mom just passed away. She was on chemo, and this is the book that made her laugh during chemo. And I was like, oh
That's
my
beautiful.
God, that's
a beautiful.
so if your work connects with that in any way, shape, or form, it's extremely gratifying.
I'll take it one step further because Mike Farragher has appeared on other podcasts, and I want to give props to Be Inspired. Lisa Anderson and the crew at WJRZ in Jersey they have a great podcast worth your time. Check it out. And I was checking it out, just boning up on and you touched me just by some things you said in that podcast, and I want to repeat a couple of them. It was 3 things that came out, and it's almost like digging into your fears and anxieties. One of them was, I'm not good enough. And I understand that feeling all too well because of the decisions I've made to go into radio and know that there's so much rejection. And it reminds me of my childhood because I was picked on a lot and dealing with that. And then also it spilled into adulthood, not feeling good enough in a relationship, not feeling good enough as a human being. So saying that made me feel like I have to be connected in some way that he feels some of these things at one point in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I had the pleasure. I mean, I picked up a pen because of Frank McCourt. And Frank McCourt wrote Angela's Ashes, which is, of course, he won the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
So I had interviewed him when he was about to write his third book, release his third book, I should say. So again, this is a Pulitzer Prize winning author.
Right.
And he's like, oh my God, think people are going to like it. Even at that level of literary, you still had your doubt and fears about the minute before this goes on sale, are people going to connect to it? So even somebody at that high level was still operating that. So I think that's just part of the human condition. And really, I tell people this all the time, Irish people are noted storytellers. And I think the difference between the Irish people that write books and the Irish people that don't, because every Irish person probably has enough stories worthy of book writing.
A lifetime,
But it really is that wall of, am I good enough? Is this valuable? Is my voice valuable? It's the ones that jump over the wall, have the books done, and then everybody else is very suppressed, and they're like, oh, I don't want to make a show of myself, or who's going to buy this? Who's going to read this? So people have that dream, and then right behind you, there's that little voice inside your head that just crushes it. And it's really, that's a daily thing. Every minute. I mean, I'm writing something now, and I'm stuck a little bit.
Wow.
Because and here I am. This is my 7th book. I'm like, how far do I want to go with this topic? Or is anybody going to write this? Is this resonating? And it doesn't get any easier 7 books in.
It can't. I mean, I think maybe the first 1 or 2 probably are, these were ideas I've always had. They're going to come spilling out. And then as you go along, you're looking for inspiration. Because I think what people don't realize is that a book is not something that you can just sit down and just blare it out. I mean, there may be a routine that goes with it, but if you don't have inspiration, then the art can't come to life.
Well, I often say that inspiration without action is just entertainment. And what I mean by that is everybody gets a burst of inspiration. And it really is a gift from on high.
Right.
If you don't immediately take action on that inspiration, then all you had was this momentary dream like, wow, this might happen. You have to capture it and either write it down, or if you had a song idea, get a guitar and start playing it. Like, hold on to that inspiration and act on the inspiration. Otherwise, it was just a momentary, dream.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense.
Yeah. So inspiration without action is just a momentary entertainment.
Well, let me ask you this, because listening to you and understanding that you are very confident in your writing, how does that confidence come about? Because I admit, still doing this and doing radio and other aspects of my life, I just don't have enough confidence in myself. So how do you deal with that? Or you just kind of blow through it and say, I know I can do this, and you channel very positive, in your head?
I think, first of all, you have to please yourself. That's the first thing. And that's not, you're always your worst critic.
Oh, my God.
But I do think that, there's this daily grind of, I'm not good enough. Yeah. Is anybody going to read this? Now, I will tell you, I'm working on something now. And I don't exactly know what it is and how it's going to turn out, but I know the title.
Okay.
The title is My One Skinny Summer. All right, you started to laugh, right? So my one skinny summer.
I haven't had one yet.
You haven't had one yet.
I honestly did have one. It was senior year of college.
That's it. And I had one senior year of high school, right? So it's all those things where, it started out to be this funny memoir about like that one skinny summer where you're really hot to trot. You had your Camaro, you had your mullet if it was in the 80s. And then, you ended up piling on weight. And then what I'm noticing now is that, okay, you're 56 years old and you have weight on you and there's health consequences to that.
Yeah, it's very true.
So it's a combination of started out really riotously funny and now it's going into like, what are the deep fears about leaving your family in the middle of the night because you're carrying weight. And I'm like, does anybody want to read something like that?
Which is the question. Yeah.
And but then so I have that comment, but then it's like, well, I'm going to push on through because I have 6 books rather, and every one of them has made money or breaking even or so it's
that's amazing. That's a great accomplishment.
That's a track record.
Absolutely.
And I know it resonates with people. So I'm persevering. Despite the fact that I'm like, how far do I go with this?
Right.
That never goes away.
Right. But you're also not afraid to kind of break away. I mean, from what I've been able to decipher, CJ, let me go back to one of the photos you just downloaded. If you can go scroll down, the one above 50 Shades, that one. There we go.
Yeah.
Collared. Now, this is a little different.
Yeah, well,
book.
This one actually had to get out of the way before I wrote the rest of the ones. So, Collared is a suspense novel set in the sex abuse scandals of the Catholic Church back in 2000. I wrote it back in 2004, and this was my way of processing the fact that it had happened to me. Wow. So, I had a inappropriate relationship with a priest, with a religious brother in my teens at my high school. It was an all-boy high school here in New Jersey. And essentially what I did was I wrote this fictional account pretending it wasn't me.
Right.
So that I can get an insight of how I felt about my church and how I felt about what happened. So I wrote the book. The first classic Irish, we don't talk about things. The first book that got put in front of somebody was my mom and dad. And I told them, this is what happened. Because this was like a family friend.
Right.
Then the second book went to him, the religious brother that abused me. So, and I put that on his lap and I was like, I'm not cool with what you did. I'm on to you.
Yeah.
And I forgive you. And with this book, that really allowed me to take my power back.
There you go.
And then all the subsequent books with the frivolity of the Shamrocks and all the humor, I just almost had a Lance the Boyle or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Say,
I get it.
look,
You almost had to just basically say, I have to get this, for lack of a better term, cancer out of my life. And maybe this is your therapy in a sense of going, I'm going to write.
Total therapy.
Right.
Every book I've ever released, which I've just recently come to this conclusion, every book that I've released, it is a moment of time for me about what I was thinking of and going through at the same time. Right. Even if it's a fictional one or if it's a book of essays, it's a comment of what I was seeing, feeling, and doing at the time, which I think is that's been pretty interesting to recently discover that. Because it's not until months later after Collared came out that it really hit me what this book was really about, which was about my own journey to forgive, to take my power back, and to move on. Like if that guy came in right now into this podcast studio, I'd shake his hand and we'd go out for a drink after.
And I'll tell you something, I don't know many people that could do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that says a lot about you, it says a lot about your character, but it's also a book that I think if you have somebody in your life that has gone through something like this, it's worth looking into. And somebody who has, unfortunately, had to go through that.
Yeah. And now, I hadn't read that book since it came out in 2004. I recently reread it and I thought, it wasn't bad. and I started to write a script on it because I do think that my book company at the time thought this would be a really great script. They invested some money into it to shop it around Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
At the time, everybody was like, oh, this is too hot. And besides, this scandal is going to go away soon. Well, guess what? 20 some odd years later, we're still talking about it.
I can see this on a Netflix very easily.
So I am writing a script. Anybody that's out there and you're interested in making a book like that, let's make a movie. CJ's right over there. He's a filmmaker. Come on.
And that's one thing about Mike Farragher. He is more than just books. You've shot a couple of things, and I'm going to play one of your pilots that you've been trying to sell, and it's about some of the things things that we've talked about, some of the funny lines that you've already said you've incorporated into a show idea called McLean Avenue. Give me a little more setup on this.
Well, McLean Avenue was, again, as I mentioned, I was at the Irish Voice. I was a music columnist, so I would go to these shows, and especially McLean Avenue it's like another county of Ireland in Yonkers, New York. And you would see these amazing people,
Right.
First of all, on the stage, what they were doing backstage, and then what the fans were doing. It's really a community and tight-knit Irish people. And the thing that I wanted to do here was, so I was immersed in that kind of a community reporting on it. But then the second thing is, there are great shows out there like Shameless, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Really funny shows and whatnot. However, they always portray the Irish as super effed up. And there is a case of that.
Yeah.
But however, the Irish people that I hang out with in a bar, we don't get drunk. We're like cutting each other and busting each other, you know what. These are sharp intellect minds that interplay was something I never really saw. I never saw myself on the screen.
Right.
And I thought there's a whole bastion of people out there that aren't drunks and F-ups, and they're bankers and they're finance people. I mean, I'm a VP of sales in my other life.
Right.
So, I mean, there are really functioning people that are really sharp-witted that I've never seen that kind of a thing portrayed. So, as in most art or most books or TV, you always, as the creator, in some cases, you might be trying to represent yourself because you have yet to see that out there. I think that's really So McLean Avenue was just a collection of those stories that I would get. I mean, it's a story about a down and out Irish tenor who goes out and sings in St. Patrick's Cathedral, and he's like has the voice of an angel, but he's a complete sexual deviant. And he lives with his mother, and he gets caught in the Me Too movement.
Yes.
She's starting to get her sexual awakening,
so
just
to
as
speak,
he's getting punished for his sexual awakening. So that dynamic in the house I thought was really funny. And we had Joe Rooney from Father Ted, who anybody that's on BritBox or whatever, he's a comedy legend in Dublin. We're so lucky to get him. Yeah. So it all sort of came together when we filmed it. And again, I just thought that was a really funny concept of, somebody being Me Too'd just as his mother is, reaching her second sexual peak. I thought that was an interesting juxtaposition, and bringing in the Irish guilt and the views on sexuality and the wise asses at the bar that are always commenting. I just thought that's an Irish stew I want to bathe in.
In Hollywood, they would call this a sizzle reel. This is a 5-minute sample of what McLean Avenue would look like. CJ, if you fire it up, let's enjoy it all together here on the A Game. Check it out.
Jesus Christ, Mom! A little privacy!
I pressed your white shirt, your black tie, and your suit is in the dry cleaning bag in the closet.
Thanks, Ma.
Just on cue here, our singer Sean McCabe has arrived. He's here to sing Our Lady of Knock.
My Queen of Peace, as we kneel with love before you, Lady of Knock, my Queen of Peace.
Jesus would want, the best for both of you. Yeah.
So, my mom walked in on me, jerking off to a porno mag.
You fucking kidding me?
Oh my.
So disturbing on so many levels.
Sunday, here again.
This is an odd place for a confession. Huh?
Is this better, Father?
Okay, your ma said you wanted to talk for real. Clearly she got the wrong impression. You're turning into one of those stodgy church ladies. Old before her time.
You're beginning to sound like Sean. He actually thinks that I should make one of those profile pics for those online dating scenes.
Well then, hell has frozen over because I agree with Sean.
Well, by Jesus, if you got the priest blessing, sure, what more do you need?
Sure, I don't know.
Do you ever use anything to help, like toys?
Ah, Jesus, man, you're cracked.
We have to bring in the heavy machinery.
Back in your bag. I'm not having any of it.
We're going to dance. We're going to dance. We're going to dance and have some fun.
I'm supposed to date a redhead.
I wore a wig.
Are you my date tonight?
Oh,
Oh,
my God.
Jesus.
Oh, my God.
Ah.
Bartender, I'm gonna need a whiskey.
Welcome to our town. Sandhogs, plumbers, and firemen, carpenters, cops, and firemen. When they reach to the Bronx and Woodside, rock away in the west of Ireland. The green.
You get a lot of laughs out of that for sure. And
still
yeah,
laughing at it.
and that's the thing. I can see this on streaming easily.
Yeah.
This has a place. It absolutely
Especially
does.
after this week, right? I mean, you had the Banshees of Inisherin, and
Yeah.
there's a record number of Irish, Irish films and actors being recognized. So
Yeah.
Hollywood's one of those things where you kind of have to wait for your turn in the sun, where you suddenly become hip again. So I would assert that hopefully being Irish is hip again with all these nominations. So
Yeah,
again, if
exactly.
anybody's listening and it's there, I've got 10 episodes written, done, we're ready to go. So it's a matter of, with these trailers, and CJ knows this as well, you go through the film festival circuit,
Right.
of which CJ is a member of as well, and you try to it's the sample. It's like the Annie Ann's pretzels, the little tiny pretzel.
Yeah, exactly.
To get you in there and buy the rest of it. So that's what we're doing now, and it's done extremely well in the film festivals. And I do think that a lot of people, whether you're Irish or not, kind of see that the bar scene and the mother dynamic. It's hopefully certainly Irish centric, but it's a very universal theme as well, for sure.
I agree with that.
And I also, since you're a music guy, by
Yes.
the way, I think, a special shout out to some of the things you hear in the soundtrack of that trailer and the rest of the show. Black 47,
Yes.
which, helped me become interested in my own culture. They mixed traditional music, which I did not understand of Ireland, and then they mixed it with hip hop beats. So Larry Kerwin's a good friend.
I realized that you have a podcast. You had him on your podcast
had him on,
too.
yeah,
Black
so-
47 was in the 90s. Funky Kaylee just became this surprise
Exactly,
hit out of
exactly.
nowhere. But it was everywhere on the radio. If you're around the New York area, there was not one station that wasn't playing Funky Kaylee.
And at the ending credits, the Narrowbacks, Seamus Keane and his brothers, Bastards of the Burrows, that is, and then Shillelagh Law, which is the funniest one of all, and Jameson's Revenge, the traditional Irish music when the guy is, pleasuring himself. They were like, wow, we lent you the music.
Right.
We didn't know you were going to do that with it."
Right, exactly. Like, what?
But, I thought it was very important, because I was a music columnist, to not just tell the stories in the show, but also make sure that we had the soundtrack being evocative of the music that was on that street when I was there.
Right.
So that's the intersection of the soundtrack plus the film is really exciting for me. Even I got goosebumps just looking at it again.
That's
It's
great.
really,
Yeah.
really fun.
You're kind of setting me up here a little bit because I did want to dive into your musical past because some of the people you've interviewed, true or false, you've interviewed Sinead O'Connor.
I interviewed Sinead O'Connor.
Wow.
I've interviewed Joe Strummer a couple weeks before he died.
That's crazy. What was that? Not knowing that he was going to die a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
But when you look back on it and you do the article and then that happens, there has to be this feeling, oh my God, I got one of the last interviews with Joe Strummer.
It was really amazing. I just remember I always ask people, house is on fire and you have to run back in and get your favorite CD. What's in your hand? And he goes, Exile on Main Street. And then the second question is, friends are coming over for dinner and you have to hide the most embarrassing CD in your collection. What's in your hand? He goes, Doris Day's greatest hits. and then he goes, Scrat, I'm not embarrassed by that. Doris Day rocks. But I have to tell you, he was so amazing. That was one of the highlights of my journalistic career. I will tell you.
How could it not, really?
The other highlight, which actually changed my life, was I interviewed Bob Geldof. So Bob Geldof, Live Aid.
Boomtown Rats, Live Aid, please.
Boomtown Rats, whole 9 yards. He had just come out with an album called Sex, Death, and something else.
Was that the one with This Is the World Coming was on that album? I think maybe not.
I don't know. But anyway,
yeah.
Sex, Love, and Death. I think that's what it's called.
Death, okay.
And it was actually, for anybody that doesn't know, he was married. Michael Hutchence busted up the marriage. They had a child. Both his ex-wife and Michael Hutchence pass away, and Bob Geldof adopts the child. And I was interviewing him at the time of this, and I was like, it was such a dark, raw album. And I'm like, how could you actually put this on vinyl?
Yeah,
because
sure.
your kids are going to listen to this
That's a legitimate
someday.
question.
And his answer, one sentence, changed the trajectory of your life. He goes, if you worry about what people think, art dies.
That's great.
That one sentence, because at the time, again, we were talking about the confidence thing.
Sure.
I was wondering, should I put Collared out? Should I be that vulnerable to say that this happened to me? I went from victim to victorious. Should I actually share that journey with people? And when he said that, if I worry about what people think, art dies, that freed me up for some reason. And 9 months later, the book was out. And that's what I needed to hear at that time.
Yeah, I can see that, and I can honestly say it helps me a lot hearing this too, because as somebody who has a lot of doubts in every aspect of its life, you're right, and I think sometimes I lack the vulnerability of putting all of it out there, and I realize what you just said. You have to be willing to put it all, or else you're going to get nothing.
Easy for me to say.
Vulnerability.
Vulnerability is strength.
Yeah.
It is, and I'm up against it now because again. With the One Skinny Summer concept, I'm like, God, how deep do I go here?
Right.
And you still have that thing in the back of your head. But if I know every time I've been vulnerable and I've shared my truth in books or whatever I've done, it's always paid off and it's always worked out all right. So
that's a good message.
I have a track record, and yet I'm still dealing with that. So for anybody that's out there, the things that keep people from being creative are putting the time on your calendar to do it, and then also just setting those doubts and fears to the side and doing it anyway.
Good message.
For sure.
Mike Farragher's here on the A Game. We've come to the halfway point, and that means it's random shot time. I got random questions. I usually try to have a random shot, and this was when you have an Irishman and you don't bring Jameson's, you're in trouble. So I had to bring and I brought the Black Barrel.
You had to.
Had to. Mainly because I got to admit.
And he had to break out the finest china, by the way.
Yeah, really. But the thing about Jameson's, and this is where I get to ask an Irishman about this. Oh, I'll take the heavy one.
No. You can. I thought I was going to get that.
Oh, no. Then you take the heavy one. You're right. You should get the heavy one. I was like, did I go too heavy on that pour? No.
Not at all. You'd be my favorite bartender.
Thank you.
Red Bank.
But when it comes to Jameson's, because it's been going through an interesting change, because it's always been the traditional Irish whiskey. I had this, and I can't go back to Jameson's. But have you tried any of the other flavors, like the orange or the IPA or the coffee stout?
Well, the coffee one is great with espresso drinks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's just top shelf. And then the orange one is a good summer drink in that when you mix it with like orange flavored seltzer and things like that,
like this.
or even the ginger ale, like a lot of people do Jameson's and ginger.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of it for sure.
Cool. Well, I drink this to you and say thanks for coming on. I also want to give props to Jimmy Steele from 95.9 The Rad for recommending this gentleman for coming on this podcast. So thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you very much.
No problem. That's right, drool. That was great. Okay, way to go, Rob. All right, random shots. We're going to go a little bit of music, a little bit of Irish, and a little bit of food.
Oh.
Yeah.
I know. Unfortunately, the food part I know all too well.
But I'm gonna
wish I didn't know the food one as well. I wouldn't be writing my one skinny summer.
There you go. But I will start with this, because recently you made an appearance at Monmouth University here in Long Branch, New Jersey. Tuesday night. I can't even talk. Damn. Tuesday Night Music Club series, you were going over the Murmur album from REM. So let's talk REM. If you had to pick 3 songs from REM that perfectly represents the band to you, what do you pick?
I'd pick South Central Rain.
Good choice.
I'd pick Radio Song.
Another good one.
I really like that one as well. And I also think the fast version of Drive.
Oh, I know that one. Yes, I have.
Because I'll tell you what, like the Drive is a great song and it's acoustic and whatnot, but they went on a couple of shows and I think it might have been bootlegged or whatever, but then they like rocked that one out. And it was a really, really good version. I also think, South Central Rain, Don't Go Back to Rockville.
That's on my top 3.
That would be it as well. That's such a great band. And actually, in preparing for that talk with Dr. Ken Womack, so shout out to him, I really got how they were really good right until the end. A lot of people maybe stopped paying attention to them after their 80s and 90s heyday, but the last 2 or 3 albums are great.
They got lost. They definitely
really did. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like when you mentioned South Central Rain, that was the first song I ever heard by REM. Working at FM 106.3 WHCG on the Jersey Shore, Radio Free Europe is like a staple song.
Yeah.
So that became a personal fave.
King of Comedy is another one, too.
Another good one.
That whole album was very glammed. I dug all of it.
Again, at times people thought, oh, they're overrated. No, they're deep down, they're an underrated band. They should be appreciated. All right, in music, better Irish drinking song, since we are sipping on some Jamesons. Would it be the Pogues version of Whiskey in the Jar, or would it be the Clancy Brothers doing Whiskey or the Devil?
Ooh, do you really have to make me choose?
I always have one that makes everybody go, why? Why did you do that?
I would actually offer a third one, and that would be the Dubliners and the Pogues doing the Irish Rover.
Oh, that is a great
That's a great one, right?
My God,
and I have a funny Pogue story if you want to hear the Shane McGowan story.
Oh, please. I was a big fan of the Pogues.
So I saw Shane McGowan, Irving Plaza, wrote up a great review.
Right.
I met him backstage. He was like gone. And then all of a sudden...
by the way, that was his reputation back in the day.
But all of a sudden, he like stumbled in front of the microphone and then his eyes lit up and he sang every word.
Oh, wow.
And there was a woman behind me that said, that's the first time I ever cheered a heroin addict on I Feel Dirty. And I wrote that in the article.
Oh, wow.
And he threatened a lawsuit with my newspaper.
Oh, my God.
And then it was touch and go for a while there, and I got kind of like the hairy eyeball the next time I went to see him.
Right.
But then, of course, he doesn't have much of a memory left, so he came towards me backstage once, and I thought he was going to punch me in the mouth. He's like, how you doing, man? All things forgiven. He forgot all about it. But it was really... I'll never forget, how is this guy going to make it on the stage? But as soon as the music started, there was this fire in his eyes, and he just killed it. And he's one of the greatest poets, musicians ever. And, Fairy Tale in New York.
That song will live forever.
Yeah, and they tried to, say, oh, it's so sensitive, we shouldn't be saying this. Come on. It's a great song. It's Christmas. It means Christmas to so many of us. But
right.
I would say, we were talking a little bit earlier, just as an acknowledgement to you, Rob, is that, I listened to you on the HDG days, and that was one of the greatest radio stations, and you were part of a DJ team that was just really second to none.
Thank you.
But, really, I was at MCX at the time in 1988, the Monmouth
University's radio station. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I remember being the music director where Rum sat on me and the lash bounced into the studio and hearing that Irish music plus the punk.
Right.
I can remember dropping the needle. I can remember exactly what I was, what I was wearing, because it was a transformative moment for Irish music.
Right.
It was amazing.
Well, how do you feel about some of the bands like Dropkick Murphys and what they're doing?
They're great.
Yeah.
They're great. I mean, some of them might be a bit reductive compared to the Pogues, but I think one of the things around the Pogues, which is a great song, and my favorite song of the Pogues is the Turkish Song of the Damned, because it goes into a Turkish Middle Eastern vibe, but then it turns on a dime and becomes an Irish reel.
Right, brings it,
which if you really look at the narrative, it says all this traditional music is the same. There's not that much. There's a fine line between what's Turkish and what's Irish.
Good point.
And I think that, first of all, it takes a crackerjack band to pull that off.
No, I agree with that.
And that's when you separate the Pogues from everybody else in my mind. Dropkick Murphys up in Boston, they do amazing music, but they also
really
do amazing charitable work.
That's what I've heard.
They're the Tossers. You've got Flogging Molly.
Flogging Molly.
So they're all from the loins, so to speak, the musical loins of Shane MacGowan. Can I say loins on this podcast?
I think you can say you can pretty much say what you want here, so don't worry about that. Let me go this way with more underrated Irish rockers, the Waterboys or Snow Patrol. Two different generations going on here, but
I actually
and both of them had like one significant hit.
Yeah, I would say Snow Patrol. Well, Snow Patrol, the guy's name escapes me at the moment, but the guy from Snow Patrol, who's I think dating or married to Courtney Cox, he's co-written most of Ed Sheeran's music, a lot of Ed Sheeran's music.
Wow, see, I didn't realize that. I didn't put that together.
That guy's getting his day in the sun.
Okay, fair enough.
I still think the Waterboys, if you look at the Waterboys again, even their late stage stuff. Amazing stuff. So you have The Hole in the Moon, which everybody knows, but one of my favorite albums of all time is An Appointment with Mr. Yeats, and what he does is he takes Yeats's poetry and he puts it to music, and it's like unbelievable.
What I'm happy about is that a song like Fisherman's Blues has wound up in several motion pictures, not just one. People have discovered this, and I'm glad the filmmakers have put to use so people now know that song, because that was always my favorite, and I want, why don't more people know about Fisherman's Blues?
Yeah. And I think, he changes his style all the time.
He does.
There's a recent song he has called the Connemara Fox, and it's just like this thumping, rocking, bluesy song, and he's got like the vocal effects on his voice. It's just like, it's great. I'm still such a fan of almost everything he does.
See, I knew I had to go into music with you.
Yeah,
you knew I had to do. I had to do this.
We're going deep.
But I'm going to go a little more Irish now. Who do you think is a bigger Irish personality? Now, they're both Irish in their descent and where they're from. Fighter Conor McGregor or talk show host Graham Norton?
I have to say, I'm not a Conor.
Not a McGregor fan. I can respect that.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Graham Norton fan. So
I'm a huge Graham Norton fan, and I think he's, what people don't know about Graham Norton, because you see a lot of the YouTube videos, but he's also a fantastic novelist. So he's got a few books out,
wow, okay.
and the books are very, they're critically acclaimed in Ireland, and they're also, I understand they're popular as well. So that's a guy that is a real storyteller, and I love him as an interviewer because he's just keeping the party going. And,
that's exactly
and
why
it's really
I love
not
him.
about him.
No,
right?
he doesn't make it about him.
And hats off to you as a podcast guest host. You're the same way. It's you're hosting the show, but it's not about you. It's about your guest, and he gets that.
Yeah. He does it in a way that, like,
whereas Conor McGregor, it's all about him.
No, it is. You're right. Conor McGregor's I'm all about Conor McGregor.
Him and his crappy whiskey, by the way. If
you've had it, okay. How bad is it, by the way?
If you served me that, I wouldn't have even put my lips to it. I'm just saying.
I love it. I love
proper
it.
12. I don't know if I could say this. We could fix this in post, but it's shite.
Shite. It's shite.
Which is what with an E at the end of it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of proper 12. It's undrinkable.
But you summed up Graham Norton perfectly, because anytime you watch it, it is a party. He's not afraid. And I feel like the actors or the musicians, when they're there, they can let loose a little bit more, because
for sure.
They're overseas, they're drinking, and Graham has a way of just making them feel so relaxed. It's like going...
And it's the curtain of this is the British stiff upper lip that he's dealing with. So the fact that he could break the stiff upper lip wall and get that out of people is even more, I think, impressive. Yeah. And I think he's fantastic. I really do. I think he's brilliant.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Okay, I'm going to go to Irish food. CJ, get photos 8 and 9 ready. Okay, so which one would you choose out of this? Number 8, that would be the Irish potato candy, or number 9, the traditional Irish soda bread.
Well, I don't want to brag or anything, but I make a killer soda bread.
Seriously? Because every one I've ever had has been drier than dirt. I mean, drier than sand, actually.
Well, you got to use it. You got to use a mixer. You got to add butter.
Yeah.
You got to the raisin quotient is key.
Take a look at this photo. This does not look like there's enough raisins.
By the way, I didn't make that one that's in the photo.
No. Yeah, well, let's get it straight. Yeah, let's get that straight. That is not a Mike Farragher creation in any way, shape, or form.
I will tell you, I'll also mix it with like mixed berries and whatnot. And my mother has it because I put an egg in there.
Yeah.
I make it a little bit cakier, and my mother's like, well, this isn't the way we made it now, and this isn't the way you were raised to make it now. And I'm like, you're eating it. And by the way, it came in third in the Holy Trinity Lutheran Church Irish Bake Off in March. They were like blown away that a man would enter, and I was like, I got this, ladies. Come on.
Yeah, it's like Mike Drop right there. Thank you very much.
I got robbed by the pastor, by the way. I don't know. No, it was really great, and it's good. I love my Irish heritage. I don't even know what that Irish potato thing is. Is that like the coconut?
Yeah, pull it up. CJ, pull up number 8 again. Yeah, this is that. It's got the coconut. It's got the cinnamon.
Let's take a look and do a deep dive of this.
Okay.
As if you'd find coconut in Ireland. First of all, are they growing anywhere?
Oh,
just like the coconut. Where would I get a feckin' coconut? Like, would I go to the? I don't know. Where's that grown anyway? Is that in the Caribbean?
Well said, sir.
I mean, unless you have the mounds, of course. But no. I think soda bread is good. I also think that shout out to the Dublin House as well, which is local, as well as St. Stephen's Green, and there's plenty of places like that. St. Stephen's
Green is a great place.
You can still get a traditional Irish breakfast served hot with the puddings, the rashers, and the beans. And this is as good of a time as any to tell everybody that I also have a podcast. And
yes,
the podcast
please.
is called Taste, which is how an Irish person from the west of Ireland would say taste. I decided to do this sort of play on Stanley Tucci's.
His journal of going over to Italy and all the places.
So how many times did you there's these mouth-watering things?
Oh my God, yeah.
That are amazing.
That I've seen on CNN, yes.
In the Irish culture, which is interesting, in the Irish culture, we spend a lot less time on meals because we want to get them out of the way to have the tea and the chat. So the desserts are amazing.
Yes, that's true.
But it's like, the food is just sustenance. Get it out of the way so we can have a 3-hour tea session with the chat. So that's the main difference between the Irish and Stanley Tucci. So I thought that was an interesting difference in the culture. So I called it Taste, and we've had Larry Kerwin on.
Yeah, I think that's great.
We've had Joni Madden from Cherish the Ladies. She's going to be coming to Monmouth University in a little bit. We've also had Celtic Women on. We've had a number of people on, and my wife, the smiling voice, Barbara Farragher, is our producer. So I couldn't have done it without her. But it's been really great because the Irish Central, which has been, a newspaper and a website, didn't really branch into podcasts, and I had this idea, so we kind of married it together, and it's been a ton of fun. A lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun.
But it's great that you kind of brought them in a weird way to the 21st century to say, hey, look, if you're going to continue as the Irish Central, this is something you need to dive into.
Yeah,
and you brought them a product, which is even better. Makes it easier.
I brought them a product, and they seem to be very happy with it. And I watch me get canceled next week.
Well, before you get canceled, I got one more random shot, and I'm going to go to photo number 10, CJ. I'm going to ask. Potatoes, I would never think Pringles from an Irishman.
Well, this is a very special picture because my wife and I are married 30 years next month.
Bravo.
Yeah, thank you very much. So any woman that's put up with me that long, her spot in heaven is there. But
sainthood.
30 years ago, we actually were so broke. We went to St. Martin. We were so broke. The last night of our honeymoon, we had a can of Pringles for dinner because we maxed out our credit cards and everything else. So 30 years later, last week, we came back with the kids, and that picture that you just showed was a can of Pringles with a bottle of champagne because we were a little bit better prepared.
Yeah.
And we just really celebrated a wonderful life. I have wonderful kids. We have so very, very blessed with a loving partnership of a marriage. And I'm not just saying that because she's in the room. And so that picture is actually a little emotional for me because it's a real arc of how far we've come. So,
It says a lot.
yeah. Right
It says a lot. CJ, get the photos together because I'm going to run down all the books real quick. Again, if you go to...
We went this far and I didn't sell a book yet?
No,
Come
you
on.
didn't sell a book yet.
Operators
Well,
are
that's
standing
why I
by,
wanna-
people.
Right. This is Your Brain on Shamrocks is one of the books that he has available. Go down to the next photo because we did not mention this. But The Last Temptation of Mary is also in his collection. Down to number 5, please, for this one. Yeah, then he's got the book here. To number 5. Come on, open it, CJ. Really? There we go. 9 rooms.
So
real quick on this one. This is set in a bed and breakfast, as a matter of fact.
yeah, so a little bit of a backstory
Yeah.
on this. Typical Irish. I'm going to make a long story long. But 9 rooms in Ballygloon, and I went back to Ireland, and my uncle had lost part of his home in a fire, and he was staying in this bed and breakfast. And I went up there, and by the way, that's a picture for my daughter Maura. She painted the actual bed and breakfast, and there were 9 rooms, 9 red doors.
Right.
And I had tea with the innkeeper, and I was like, "This place is awesome. It's like an old carriage house, old country Irish carriage house." And she goes, "Sure, you get all sorts here. You get like the Belgian band players and everything else, and people that are having an affair on the weekend. And I tell you, I should write a book." And I just looked her in the eye, and I'm like, "You better hurry up before I do." So I went up that driveway, no intention to write a book. I came down with a book idea, and here was the book idea that I had. There were 2 stories that were going on in this little town of Ballyglunin.
Right.
One of them was where the train station for the Quiet Man. It's located there.
Oh my God,
So they
classic
were,
movie.
they
Oh
were-
my God, yes.
They were trying to make that into a historical place. So that's really happy, and it's really a lot of fun. And I went there. It's awesome. On the other side of town in Athenry, their story had just broken when I was there that the Bon Secours nuns had buried 700 bodies, infant bodies, from their orphanage that they had in town for unwed mothers. So they would take the unwed mothers in, and if the baby died, they'd bury him in the back. So here you had this like gruesome story.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of town is like,
this thing, yeah.
the jewel of Irish American memories is the Quiet Man, right? So I thought like, that's really funny that, and then I was looking at the Irish Times and the New York Times, and I took stories that were ripped from those newspapers at the time, and I made a short story and filled each of the 9 doors with 9 stories out of that.
Nice.
And it just kind of came to me, and I started to write it as soon as I made the journey home, actually on the plane.
Yeah.
And that's just the way creativity is. You really have to be open to ideas and not just swat them away because, who'd buy that?
No, it's
let's just like spool that a little bit. So that's really been, I wanted to tell that story because I think it's an example of you want to be open to creativity and you never know where the next idea is going to come from.
Well, it's well said. Speaking of which, photo number 6, we didn't even mention this before we get out of here. A Devilish Pint is another book in his series. Again, we're talking about Amazon, and wherever you get your books online, you can purchase this. Real quick, Devilish Pint, what would they expect on this one?
So Devilish Pint it's an interesting one because I had a dream that I had read this book called Conversations with God, which is really great. And I had a dream that night that after reading the book on the plane, going to a business trip in Belgium, I had a dream that the devil was on the hood of my car. He looked a little like Jack Nicholson. He
looked like Jack.
He points to the church, a local guy. He points to the church and he goes, "Let's go to an Irish pub. I'm going to tell you how life really works." And there was this story that he told in the dream about how life worked. And I woke up, and it was one of those, I'm still getting chills. It was one of those things where it was such a profound message that I was like, wow, that'd be a sin to not do something with that. So I sort of built this story around it. It's just a conversation about life and faith and the upshot of it, and this is what I believe spiritually, is if God created you in his image, then God's perfect, you're perfect, and the quote-unquote devil doesn't have horns. It's more of those doubts and fears we were talking about.
Wow.
So anything that keeps you from your potential,
that hits me.
Take the case that that's the devil. It's not somebody with red face and horns. It's, God made you, you're perfect, and all those disempowering thoughts are, whatever you want to call it, the devil or whatever, but it's taking you from God's potential that he had in you. And I really believe that. I think that could be a universal thing in the Muslim faith and the Jewish faith and no matter what faith you subscribe to, you could all agree that higher power is perfect, and you exist in that person, and the doubts and fears is what keeps you from that potential. And that's really,
I have to agree with that 1,000%.
that's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
I have to say that's one of my favorite books.
As somebody who's been going through a lot of that, especially recently with the doubts and the fears, I say that 1,000% because it's made me recently just sign up for therapy again. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I feel like I'm having a therapy session with Mike.
By the way, I have some notes on this.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to need it. Oh my God.
I've got some notes. No, but you know what? It is good. I mean, I will just tell you for what it's worth. I mean,
please.
I was super excited about being here with you because, again, you were part of something super special within WHTG, and I remember, even though we're the same age, I grew up listening to you and how you created things and the music scene that we had at the Green Parrot and all of those things. It was such, when you invited me on, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get interviewed by this guy. So I have if you could see yourself how I see you as somebody that's made such a contribution.
I wish I could. I'm being honest with you. I wish I could because I'm like, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. But it's like, that's probably been my biggest problem in my life. I wish I could see that. It's gotten me in trouble in relationships, in career, in life.
CJ, can we get a couch in here? So
I need the freaking couch now.
CJ, get us a couch stat into the
with that.
But again, we all
therapy too.
You're therapy too, but we all have a version of that.
Yeah,
and that makes us so. It's just basic human condition that you're going to have those doubts and fears.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, and another credit to this where credit's due. I took a course a number of years ago called the Landmark Forum, and it was
I'm not familiar with
this. It was an amazing course, and what it does is it allows you to just really take a look at those disempowering areas that are holding you back from your potential, and getting to the root cause of that and going, okay, well, is that going on right now in my life? No. Okay, why don't I drop it? And it was a whole weekend of just doing that. And in that whole weekend, I probably did, 90 years of therapy.
Wow.
So
it
was allowing me to decompartmentalize the places where I was feeling disempowered and bringing myself down, interrupting that thought process and going, thanks for sharing. Right. And we're just moving on and doing it anyway. So
that actually makes me feel a little better because I think I've had a tendency of compartmentalizing a lot of stuff. And I think people do that, but it's not healthy to try to do that with everything in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm not discounting therapy or anything else like that. It's listen, whatever gets you through the night, as John Lennon would say.
Yeah, it's all right.
But for me, it really was
that course.
Well, it was that course, but also the subsequent books that I've written in one way, shape, or form helped me understand myself and my world.
Absolutely.
And I wish that for everybody else. And in fact, what I also like to talk about is, for anybody that's local here, I do host a Rise and Write event on the third Saturday of the month because at this point, 6 books in, enough about me and my books and having my name on the cover of a book, I really get charged right now from the contribution I can make to other people writing their books. So if I can actually be mentioned in page 2, in the acknowledgement,
thanks.
That's actually more valuable to me right now than having a 7th book with my name on it, because I know I made a difference in that person's life, and I'm able to pay it forward to allow people to be self-expressed and get their power the way the written word has helped me with my power. For sure.
Amen to that. I will put up the other 2 just because we're wrapping this up.
Just because we're trying to sell books.
Yeah, we are still trying to do that.
You only have a few shopping weeks until St. Patrick's Day, folks. So
yeah, exactly.
These make great gifts. Give the gift of Irish kilt.
CJ, the last 2 photos, if you would, we'll start with 50 Shades. Now that one, Collard.
Can I still be drinking whiskey even though we stopped the
absolutely.
The random shots?
No,
section?
please indulge. Collard, highly recommend.
Don't let me interrupt you, by the way, in pushing my butts. Go ahead.
No, this is what I do at the end of every podcast. Collard, please get that. It's such an intense message and such a personal story. And underneath that, 50 Shades of Green. CJ? Thank you very much. These are all books. Amazon Prime. You can go through wherever you get Goodreads, wherever you get your books. Go out, get it in any form you want, and I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Sir, I thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate this.
I appreciate you. And
Thanks,
again, what an honor to be interviewed by really somebody that I grew up with listening to on the radio, and it's just a huge honor. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And that's a wrap on the A Game. We'll do it again next week. So watch here on Thursday night and through a shared universe. And by the way, a YouTube channel, please like it and follow along because this is episode 92. We're inching closer to number 100. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Close.
Close. We're getting there.
Who's going to be on 100?
You already know who's going to be number 100.
We'll just keep the tape rolling, and we'll make a couple of more episodes right now. Like that. We'll take it. The lights are still on.
Yeah, that's the scary part. The lights are still on. No. For Mike Farragher, I'm Rob Acampora. There's a beer waiting for both of us. We're out of here. Take care. Have a great week and weekend ahead.